It can be hard to explain and understand ADHD. I get that. But in this video, I'm going to walk us through how to better understand and explain ADHD to someone who doesn't have it. So whether you are trying to better explain it to people in your life, or you are the person that wants to better understand ADHD, this video is for you. Hi, I'm Christine Kotick, and I'm an ADHD coach. I help people with ADHD to thrive in a neurotypical world. Common thought out there in the world is that ADHD people are challenged with a lack of attention. It's like a floodlight. That's what I want to say. It's like getting the whole entire stage lit up, right? So we're bringing in all this information from everywhere, right? So our focus is going, oh my gosh, what do I pay attention to here? I'm noticing the sounds. Oh, it's so hot in here. I'm noticing that I'm hungry and my stomach is growling. The teacher's talking. The person next to me is tapping their fingers, all those things. And it's all coming in, and it's really hard to focus on what I should be focusing on. So to train that spotlight on the teacher talking, or to train that spotlight on the worksheet that's in front of me that I'm working on, or the essay that I'm writing, it's really hard to do that. So it's not that I'm not focusing at all. It's just that all those other things are coming in, and I can't train my spotlight on the thing that maybe I know I should be training it on. So that's really the issue with focus in ADHD. So sometimes we hear the term hyperfocus, and we might think, well, what exactly does that mean? I'll give you an example. I had this problem when I was a teacher, and doing my lesson planning, and I'd sit down in the evening and get ready to do my lesson planning, and I'd start researching things, right? And I'd go down the rabbit hole of gathering information, and I'd gathering. I was hyper focused on all that information, and oh, that's a new thing, and that's a new thing. Oh, that's cool. And which was great, right? I had so much information, but the problem was that was my hyper focus. I was totally into that, and I had a really hard time switching that off and getting back in to using that information for my lesson planning. But what the problem is you have to be able to shut that off and move on to the next step. That's really the video games, right? Kids hyper focus on that. They can be so into it that the whole day can go by. So we lose track of time. We forget that we are hungry. Maybe we're not even hungry, so we forget to eat. All those different things happen when we're hyper focused on something. So that's like that spotlight gets turned on and we can't turn it off. That hyper focus makes it really hard to do that. And ADHD brains get caught up in that more than the neurotypical brain does. Executive functioning covers there's three main areas of it. There's our working memory. There's our cognitive flexibility, which is like being able to sustain attention, or shift our attention, transfer it to something else as the demands change. So that's like your flexible thinking. If there's different rules for different settings, that's kind of that cognitive or mental flexibility. And the final piece of executive functioning is self-control. So that's what enables us to kind of set responsibility priorities, resist impulse actions or responses. And so those are the three main pieces of executive function. The skill areas where those affect people are in paying attention, organizing, planning, prioritizing, starting tasks and staying focused on them all the way till completion, understanding different points of view. So, getting it from one person's perspective, my own maybe, and understanding another person's perspective on that. Regulating our emotions, not going from 0 to 1,000 in 2 seconds, but, kind of climbing that ladder and realizing, oh, I'm up here. I need to come back down. So big reactions for small problems. And sometimes the opposite way, big problems, but very low emotional reaction. Metacognition or self-monitoring, which is where we are kind of keeping track of what we're doing. We're asking ourselves questions, am I doing this fast enough, slow enough? Do I understand it all? Do I have any more questions? That kind of piece is the last piece of it. And that's executive functions, like giving us a really good explanation of what it is. Executive functioning can be really challenging for people to kind of grasp, what does this mean? And so thinking of ways to explain it that maybe a 5-year-old might understand, or honestly, even a 13-year-old or an 18-year-old might understand. Conductor of an orchestra. So the orchestra has all these different pieces that it needs to have for everything to work together and to play beautiful music. And, you have your string section and there's different instruments in there, and you have your brass section and there's different instruments in there. And then you have you might have a piano player, you're going to have a woodwind section, you're going to have a percussion drumming section. So you have all those different sections. And in that, there's different instruments, there's different instrument players. So you have your, people playing these things. And at the top of that, at the front of that, you have a conductor. And the conductor of that is like that. They're the person that's standing up there and they're, if you've ever watched, they're waving their arms and they're doing all of this. And that has meaning, right? It has meaning to the people who are playing the music. And they might tell one group to bring it up, be louder, and another group be quieter. And they may stop everybody all at once and bring everybody in, or maybe they're going to cue that group to come in. And so in a simplistic way, that's what your executive functions do. There's that core thing that's like directing all of these different areas of your life. So it might be bringing up the organization and cueing that sustained attention to come in. And it does all those things so that you can play a beautiful piece of music that all kind of is flowing together the right way and staying all in the same area, and kind of to build a something that sounds good and not something that is just people popping in all over the place. So that's one way to think of executive functions, is that you need something to conduct and pull all those things in. So what is working memory exactly? And so when you think of working memory, I think of it like of this place in our brain that's like a little bucket, and we can put stuff in it that we want to use right away. So we can put a phone number in there, right? And we can remember it. Nowadays, nobody remembers this, but I'm old enough to know that we used to have to remember all of our phone numbers, right? And so I could put it in there and I could remember it long enough to put it in my phone. Back then you had to dial it in, but now, you type it in your phone. That's working memory. It's a place where you're going to use that information. Some people, their working memory doesn't work so great. So they're trying to learn something, and maybe they're learning a math procedure. And so they're putting it in, it's going in their working memory. They're working on it. They're working on the problems. But if it's something else comes in, like, oh, I hear a bird. That's birds tweeting, tweet, tweet, tweet. I think that's a robin. And that goes in my working memory. As more goes in, other things have to come out. So there's only a finite amount of information that you can hold in your working memory. And so when it gets overtaxed with too many things coming in, other things kind of go out. And so we have to take things from our working memory and be able to transfer them into our longer term memory. And so to me, this is one of the big places with ADHD brains that we kind of things drop out. Why people say, oh, I studied for that test. I went through my notes and I did all that. But then I got to the test and I couldn't remember anything. It was like I never even looked at it. So it might be that there's more things that need to be done to help remember. making a visual list so we don't have to remember those things, writing something down so we don't have to remember it. But that's a little bit about how our working memory works. We think of the term hyperactivity and people go right to that. Oh, that's ADHD, right? It's right in there. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's right there. And so people assume that in order to have ADHD, you have to have hyperactivity. And that is absolutely not true. There are people who have hyperactivity, and when you're little, that can be moving around in your seat, getting up out of your seat all the time, cutting in line. We always got to be, I got to go, I got to do the thing, I can't sit still, I can't hold my words in my mouth, they're coming out. I guess we can probably all think of a hyperactive person. As people get older, the hyperactivity looks different. It may be the person who, if they're sitting at a conference for work, or a meeting for work, gets up a couple times to refill their coffee or to go to the bathroom, or they stand in the back, and you can't see this because it's only from here up, but that jiggles their leg all the time, right? That's me. I'm a leg jiggler. I bounce it up and down and bounce it up and down. That's that need to move that's still in me. As the hyperactivity part is, I fidget. I got to, have something to do with my hands, something to do with my legs. So that hyperactivity, it's my brain racing. So that's the hyperactivity part of ADHD, but not everybody who has ADHD has to have that. People used to think that there was ADHD and ADD. Now, medical professionals, it's all ADHD. And so when you get a diagnosis, you can have ADHD, impulsive or hyperactive type. You could be diagnosed with ADHD inattentive presentation. That's what they call it, inattentive presentation. Or you could have ADHD combined presentation, which is just what you think. You have the hyperactivity piece, that impulsivity piece, and you also have that inattentive challenge with focus. That someone says, oh, you have ADHD, or, oh, I have ADHD. And you're like, I don't see that hyperactivity. I've never seen it. Well, they might be inattentive ADHD. So it's a learning curve. A lot of people still say ADD. And the interesting thing is, as people become adults, you may not see any of it. So it's really important to go through and get that diagnosis. I'm not just, bouncing around all the time. Wow, that's my ADHD. That's why I can't sit still. That's why it's so hard to pay attention during a meeting. That's why my mind always seems to be wandering. That's why, all those things. So it's important to help understand those. And I think it's important to help other people understand how this affects your child, how it affects you, someone you love, because oftentimes, it's not a visible disease. We don't carry some outward sign. I don't know, maybe we should all carry around little ADHD flags or something, but people don't know that. And so when we do something that's not expected and doesn't fit a neurotypical expectation of things, it's important that people understand it's not like me wanting to make you angry, or me wanting to, purposefully get this wrong, purposefully not do it. It's not purposeful. It's part of this thing called ADHD. And it's an area where someone has trouble managing their symptoms. So I think that's really important to keep in mind, is the invisibility to the outside world sometimes of some of the symptoms of ADHD. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you've learned and improved your understanding about ADHD and how you could explain it to somebody else who maybe doesn't get it at all. There's probably, if you're interested in more content, there should be some videos popping up here. If you have time, go ahead and watch. And if you liked this video, which you have to, it's great, go ahead and click on the like button down there and subscribe to this channel for more information on ADHD and how it might affect your life. Thanks.